In Tehran today, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad calling anti-government protests a, quote, nauseating masquerade backed by the U.S. and its allies, as his government calls for the punishment of opposition leaders for sparking renewed unrest months after the disputed presidential election. For more on what this most recent round of protests means, let's bring in Jim Robbins, Senior Fellow in National Security Affairs at the American Foreign Policy Council. Ahmadinejad really has his hands full right now. He's got all kinds of pressure from the outside regarding the nuclear program, the legitimacy of the election, and now he's got problems in the streets.
Yeah, it's amazing that these protests have continued, and they're growing increasingly radical. Last June, during that wave of protests, mainly the protesters were angry about the election that they saw as rigged, but now the protests are taking on an increasingly revolutionary tone. They're talking more about regime change, which makes it more difficult for him.
I'm old enough to remember the killings at Kent State University in Ohio and how that really rocked this country and in many ways changed its direction. Is this the same kind of an event for Tehran?
It's certainly possible. The more martyrs, if you will, of the new revolution that they create, the more difficult it'll be for the regime to maintain its legitimacy. You can't just shoot down peaceful demonstrators in the street and get away with it over time.
Iran accuses the U.S. and Britain of fomenting these riots. Is there possibly any truth to that? I mean, might we have some covert agents out there trying to stir things up?
Well, it's hard to say what might be going on, but I don't think it's a policy of the Obama administration to send covert operatives into Iran to start demonstrations. The most the United States has ever done in Iran is send information into that country. Perhaps that's what they're talking about, but really blaming this on foreign outsiders is a way to try to discredit the demonstrators in the streets, and there's really no evidence for it. If there was evidence, they should present it.
So what should the Obama administration do?
I think the president has gotten on top of this a lot faster than he did in the June demonstrations, and that's to his credit. I think he understands now that the regime he's been reaching out to is not the kind of regime that's going to make nice with him, and I think the most important thing to do at this time is to encourage the Iranian people in their pursuit of freedom. I think the president should continue with that line. I think it'll be productive in the long run, both on this issue and on the nuclear issue.
Well, how can we encourage them or maybe even aid the protesters without turning into the kind of scapegoat that the Iranian government portrays us to be?
That line came up also in the summertime when defenders of the White House, not saying anything, said, well, they'll just scapegoat us, but they did anyway. The regime is going to do that no matter what. So it's important for the president to stand up for American principles, whether or not the Iranians are going to blame us for the demonstrations. Clearly, they're not our fault. We didn't start them. This is an indictment of the Islamic regime itself. The president shouldn't just sit back and do nothing. If he encourages these people, perhaps we can see some actual change.
Who is really in charge over there? Is it the Ayatollahs? Is it the military? Is it Ahmadinejad?
Well, Ahmadinejad is the president, but he's not really in charge. I mean, the religious leaders are the ones who are actually in charge, and he was put in power by them, essentially. That's where the real change has got to come. Ahmadinejad is, in many ways, just a front man.
So if he wanted to stop this, if he wanted to come to some kind of conciliation with the protesters, he would have to get the go-ahead from the Ayatollahs.
Yes, I don't think that he would be leading with trying to seek conciliation. He's going to follow the directives that come to him from the religious leadership, and there's been no sign that they're going to bend in any way.
Jim Robbins from the American Foreign Policy Institute. Thank you.